Were you a kid in the year 2001? Well, before every kid had a laptop, a Kindle, an iPad, and a tablet, we used to have the Scholastic book fairs. You see, I was a kid in the year 2001, and the Scholastic book fairs in the public education system was not to be messed with. It was a great day if the book fair was available. You see, as kids in the year 2001, we didn't all have cell phones and couldn't just text each other, send each other memes or GIFs, or even just pull out a laptop and play computer games with each other. However, on the school buses, we did take out our Yu-Gi-Oh cards and have legendary duels. A few times a year, the book fair would be available. This meant that as a kid, you can go and look for some wild and crazy books to use to entertain yourself or to show off to your peers. Typically, there were three kinds of books that every boy in the year 2001 wanted at the book fair. That included drawing books, those books that have the pictures in them of your favorite cartoons and animes to help you learn how to draw them. The Ripley's Believe It or Not books were always amazing to look at because we didn't have the internet. You had to look at these books in order to see some crazy stuff. And you also had the Guinness Book of World Records. Everyone always loved those books. They always had cool designs and everyone gravitated towards them. So I mentioned already that the year was 2001. That's just to give you a rough range of the time period that it was. This time at the book fair, all of the good books were taken. There wasn't even any Goosebumps books. And as I got sad that I missed out on all of the much more cool books, as I was leaving, I happened to look at one table that had one particular book on it, and I was blown away. This is the book I saw. Steve Austin, The Stone Cold Story. Meet the man behind the legend. Are you kidding me? Every boy in the early 2000s and late 90s was a wrestling fan. Either you liked the WWF or you liked the WCW. Or you just liked all of it because everyone else did and you didn't want to be left out. That's how popular wrestling was in the early 2000s. This book is written by Terry West, and it was distributed none other than, of course, by Scholastic. This book was printed and put in the market in September 2001. As a wrestling fan in the early 2000s, when the internet wasn't quite the internet just yet like how it is now, it was amazing to have a book like this, just to have any source of information about a favorite pro wrestler. Let's take a look at the back. Even if you know zilch about wrestling, you've heard of the man who calls himself Stone Cold Steve Austin. Steve Austin is the real deal. He's the dude who kicked life into pro wrestling when the sport itself was on the ropes. He was the first heel to be cheered by fans. Steve Austin is a WWF champ and a real-life legend. Here's his story from childhood to college football to WCW, Pretty Boy Stunning Steve to WWF Resurrector. Relive the matches. Check out his death defying injuries, his against all odds comebacks, his friends, and ferocious foes. This book is unauthorized. So it also says this book is not authorized or sponsored by the WWF, the WCW, Steve Austin, or anyone involved with them. The back of the book also mentions this edition is only available for distribution through school markets. It was things like this that you just really appreciated as a kid in those days. Those little nuggets, if you will, that the school system would do for the kids. I don't know how the public schooling system is nowadays, but, it should be all about the kids. There's got to be times you reward them, and this was definitely a reward to me. So, let's go on and open up a 2001 unauthorized Scholastic children's book about Stone Cold Steve Austin in the year 2025. Oh, hell yeah! Let's get started with the introduction on page 1. In the early 1900s, there was a huge audience for professional wrestling. Matches between opponents lasted for hours. Sometimes an audience would watch a single match involving two men for 3 or 4 hours. But over time, people began to shy away from matches, citing that wrestling was often tedious and, well, boring. As professional wrestling matured, a decision was made. Matches had to be shorter, but the only way to accomplish this was to orchestrate the matches. The outcome of a match was decided before the two wrestlers even entered the ring. Time limits were placed on matches to keep fans from leaving. Wrestlers developed larger than life personalities to appeal to the audience. There were bad guys, as they would call heels, were created for the audience to boo. Good guys, as they're called, baby faces, were created for the audience to cheer. Heels were supposed to be cowards who would take advantage of an opponent whenever the opportunity arose. The baby faces could take the punishment, which would put many of us in the hospital, and find the strength from the audience to rise up off the mat and pin their foes. Over the years, wrestling reflected what was going on in the world. If the United States was at war with another nation, a villain supposedly from that country would soon emerge from the ranks of professional wrestling, eager to challenge the American hero of the day. In the early 1980s, professional wrestling began to attract more and more fans, spurred by World Wrestling Federation. The WWF owner, Vince McMahon Jr., heroes such as Hulk Hogan and Jimmy Superfly Snuka fought notorious bad guys and used their flamboyant personalities and personas to make millions of dollars in merchandise. Professional wrestling was enjoying its greatest success yet. In the span of 10 years, however, professional wrestling would change dramatically. Wrestlers filled with attitude begin to challenge the concept of good guys and bad guys, and one wrestler in particular would forever blur the line between a babyface and a heel. Stone Cold Steve Austin. With his penetrating blue eyes and swagger in the ring, Austin would take the sports entertainment field of wrestling and turn it upside down. This book is about the man behind the personality. The man actually named Steve Williams. Steve Williams, the man who would one day shake the world of professional wrestling to its core, was born on December 18th, 1964, in Victoria, Texas. However, he would not be there long enough to build childhood memories. You see, his family moved to Edna, Texas, while Steve was still a baby. Steve was a friendly child with blonde hair and a soft smile. And by the fifth grade, he began watching professional wrestling on television. His love of the sport was deep and immediate. His parents tried to get him to go outside and play instead of watching television, but they couldn't pry him away from wrestling. As a child, Steve was a far cry from the man we know today as Stone Cold Steve Austin. Steve was kind of a shy and always polite kind of kid, but by the time he attended Edna High School, he was so popular that his classmates voted him class favorite 3 years running. He also made the Honor Society. It was during his high school years that Steve began to demonstrate his sense of humor. He was considered a class clown by many of the students and teachers. Believe it or not, this trait would one day prove invaluable to Steve as a professional wrestler. Steve could entertain, which is one of the most valuable qualities of a professional wrestler. The other necessary attribute of a professional wrestler, anyway, is the ability to be athletic. And Steve had a truckload of that. In high school, he joined the track and field team. His event was throwing the discus. He also played football. Steve's performance on the football field earned him a scholarship to the North Texas State University in Denton, Texas, known as the University of North Texas. Steve attended classes and played for the Denton Eagles for most of 1985 and 1986. He started out as a linebacker, but as his football abilities grew, Steve shifted to defensive tackle. While pursuing a degree in physical education, Steve had battled his bad knees, but he finished every game of his senior year. And though he was considered a fantastic football player, Coach Corky Nelson once commented that Steve was born to play football. Steve felt that he wasn't good enough to play professionally. So, after the season was over, Steve made a tough choice. He left North Texas State University without a degree. His scholarship money was gone, and he didn't think college was the route for him. Steve paid for one semester out of his own pocket, but it was too difficult to work to pay for his schooling and go to classes full time. So he took a job unloading trucks on a freight dock. However, this wasn't quite what he had planned for his future either. Young, frustrated, and still not sure where his destiny would lead him, Steve made the best of his job. He had to make a living. But if he was going to be a dock worker, then he would be the best dock worker that he could be. This determination is another trait that would help Steve find success one day. When many would grumble and complain at the hard work and only do what was required of them and no more, Steve threw himself into the job. He paid his bills and try to make the best of the situation. It wasn't too long after this, however, that the square ring would come calling. So, what's the bottom line of Chapter 1? Well, the bottom line is Steve Austin had to change his name early in his career because another wrestler, Steve Dr. Death Williams, was already using it. And if you want me to read Chapter 2, leave a like on this video. Oh, hell yeah!